This happened in late October last year. I live in a small town in Pennsylvania where it rains a lot in the fall. That night, it had been raining for hours. A steady, cold drizzle that never really let up. I had the house to myself. My roommate was out of town for the weekend, and I didn't have any plans, so I figured it'd be a chill night of movies and hot food. Around 9 p.m., the power flickered once, but didn't go out, so I lit a few candles just in case, and kept watching TV. It was cozy, honestly. Just the rain against the windows, the occasional gust of wind through the trees, and the soft flicker of candlelight. Then came a knock at the door. Not loud. Just 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I froze. My front porch is covered, so I couldn't see anyone from the living room window. I waited for a second knock. Nothing. Thinking maybe it was a delivery or a neighbor, I got up and opened the door. But no one was there. The porch light was on. The steps were empty. The street was completely quiet. Still, I stepped outside and glanced around, even checked under the overhang in case someone was hiding, but it was just rain and darkness. I chalked it up to my imagination, or maybe someone pranking me, and went back inside. I sat back down. Not even 5 minutes passed before I heard the knock again. 3 knocks, same rhythm. Not rushed, not timid. Just calm. This time, I didn't open the door. I walked quietly to the side window and peeked out. Still no one there. At this point, I was more confused than scared. But I locked the door, made sure all the windows were secured, and kept the lights on in every room. Around midnight, I finally felt tired enough to sleep. I double-checked everything, turned off the lights, and went to my room upstairs. I was just starting to drift off when I heard it again. Only this time, it wasn't from the front door. It was coming from inside the house. 3 knocks. From downstairs? Maybe the back door. My heart just stopped. I lay there, straining to hear anything else. At first, I thought maybe it was just the house settling, or the wind against something loose. But then, I heard it again. Louder now, like it was just at the bottom of the stairs. I reached for my phone to check the cameras. I had an old security system, just one camera pointed at the front door and another in the living room. Nothing showed up on the front cam, but the living room feed was glitching. Static for a second, then movement. A shadow passed through the room. Fast. Too fast for someone just walking. I couldn't breathe. I sat up, clutching the phone, debating whether to call 911 or not. But then I noticed something in the camera feed that made my blood run cold. The candle. I'd blown it out before going to bed. But in the camera, it was lit. The flame flickered, then the camera cut out entirely. That was it. I called 911 and stayed locked in my room until they showed up 20 minutes later. They searched the house, top to bottom. Every door was still locked, every window still shut. But the candle on the coffee table, it was lit when they found it. And there were 3 wet footprints by the back door. No signs of forced entry. No one caught. And no explanation for the knocks, the movement, or the candle. To this day, I don't know who or what was in the house with me that night. But every time it rains, I still listen for those 3 knocks. This happened in late fall of 2022. I was doing an overnight drive back to my apartment after visiting my sister 2 towns over. She lives about 3 hours from me, and by the time I left, it was already 11 p.m. The forecast had called for light rain, but halfway through my drive, it turned into a full-on storm. The roads were winding, surrounded mostly by woods, and barely lit by anything besides my headlights. There were no other cars out, just miles of wet pavement, heavy rain, and trees that swayed violently with every gust of wind. I had about 45 minutes left in the drive when I saw something strange ahead. At first, it looked like a traffic cone or debris in the road. But as I got closer, I realized it was a person, standing in the middle of the road. Just standing there. I hit the brakes and came to a slow stop maybe 30 feet from them. They weren't moving. They didn't wave or react to my headlights, just stared directly at me. The rain was pouring, but they didn't seem to care. I waited, expecting them to either walk toward me or step off the road, but they just stood there, completely still. I leaned on the horn. Nothing. Eventually, I started inching the car forward, thinking maybe I could just nudge them into reacting. Not to hit them or anything, just make them aware I wasn't going to sit there all night. I got maybe 10 feet closer when they suddenly turned and bolted into the woods. No hesitation, just a full sprint into darkness. I sat there for a few seconds, unsure what to do. I rolled down the window and called out. I don't even know why. Maybe part of me thought they needed help. But the woods swallowed up the sound instantly. No answer. Just the rain. I drove on, unsettled, but figuring maybe it was someone high, or drunk, or just mentally unwell. About 15 minutes later, I passed through another stretch of forest and started to relax a little. But that's when I noticed something. The same person, standing in the road, same posture, same distance, just standing in the headlights, soaked head to toe. I slammed the brakes again, this time with my heart pounding out of my chest. There was no way they could have gotten here faster than me, not on foot, not through a storm and miles of forest. And again, no reaction. I didn't wait this time. I hit reverse, backed up about 100 feet, then swerved onto the shoulder and past them. I didn't even look at their face as I went by. I was too scared of what I might see. The rest of the drive was a blur. I didn't stop. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I just wanted to get home. I made it back around 1:30 a.m., completely rattled. I pulled into my lot, parked, and sat in the car for a second to calm down. That's when I got the notification. A motion alert from my apartment's security camera, the one pointed at my front door. I opened it immediately. The footage was grainy from the rain, but in the clip, at 1:27 a.m., someone walked past the door. Not toward it, not trying to open it, just past it, wearing the same drenched clothes, same building, same stillness. They were already at my apartment before I even pulled in. The timestamp was 2 minutes before I parked. I ran inside and stayed up the entire night, lights on, baseball bat in hand. But they never showed again. Police came and reviewed the footage. But all they said was that the figure never approached the door and didn't do anything illegal. Still, I haven't driven that road since. This happened about 2 years ago, when I was renting a small 2-story house in upstate New York. I was between jobs at the time, doing freelance work from home. It wasn't ideal, but the rent was low and the area was quiet, mostly surrounded by woods and a few neighboring houses scattered along the road. It had been raining non-stop for 3 days straight, one of those slow, cold rains that never lets up. I was getting cabin fever from being stuck inside, but the weather just made it impossible to go anywhere. That night, the storm got worse. Thunder had been rumbling in the distance all evening, and the wind picked up so bad that the trees outside kept banging against the windows. I remember checking the forecast around 10 p.m., and it said the worst of the storm was supposed to hit around midnight. I figured I'd stay up a bit longer. I was sitting in the living room, lights on, editing photos on my laptop, while an old sitcom played in the background. That's when I noticed the first flicker. The overhead light blinked, just once. Then a few seconds later, it happened again. It wasn't that unusual, especially with the wind howling like that. I even joked to myself that the power would probably cut out soon. I had some candles nearby just in case, but then it flickered again. Not just the ceiling light this time, but the lamp in the hallway too. And when it did, I swear I saw a shadow stretch across the far wall, just for a split second, like someone had walked between the hallway and the kitchen. I paused the TV, just sat there, listening. The wind outside was loud, but inside, the house was dead silent. No creaks, no movement. I told myself it was probably just headlights from a car passing by, but deep down, I knew that didn't make sense. I live at the end of a dead-end road. No one drives out here unless they're visiting. Trying to shake the feeling, I stood up and walked into the kitchen. Everything looked normal. I even opened the back door just to peek out. Nothing but black trees swaying in the rain. I locked up, turned off the TV, and headed upstairs to get ready for bed. It was around 12:20 a.m. when I got to my bedroom. The storm was loud now. Rain hitting the roof like pebbles, wind screaming through the trees, and thunder rumbling every few minutes. I climbed into bed and pulled the blanket over me, but I couldn't sleep. The image of that shadow had me on edge. I couldn't stop imagining someone standing just out of sight, watching me. Every creak in the floorboards made my heart jump. Then, just as I was starting to drift off, the lights flickered again. This time, my bedroom lamp dimmed low and didn't come back to full brightness. It just buzzed softly, like it was struggling to stay on. Then, I heard something from downstairs. It sounded like a door creaking open, or maybe the floor settling. But it didn't stop. It was a slow, rhythmic sound, like soft footsteps on the hardwood. I sat up in bed, staring at the hallway outside my room. Then the hallway light turned on, all by itself. I froze. I knew for a fact I had turned it off when I came upstairs. I didn't move. I just stared at the light spilling under the door. Then it went off again. At this point, I wasn't just unsettled, I was terrified. I grabbed my phone and turned on the camera app. I crept out of bed, tiptoed to the hallway, and opened the door as quietly as I could. Everything was pitch dark. But when I aimed my phone's flashlight down the stairs, I saw it. A wet footprint, right at the bottom of the staircase. Not mine. I hadn't been outside, and I hadn't let anyone in. I backed into my room, shut the door, locked it, and called 911. I whispered to the dispatcher that I thought someone had broken into my house. She told me to stay in the room and keep quiet. I stayed on the line, listening to the silence of the house and the occasional creak that made my skin crawl. The police showed up about 15 minutes later. They didn't find anyone, but they did find that the back door was unlocked, something I was sure I had locked. And there were more wet footprints, in the hallway, in the kitchen, and a single one at the foot of the stairs, right before the hallway light switch. They said maybe it was a break-in, or maybe someone was casing the place, and I just got lucky by locking myself in early. But they didn't explain how the lights were flickering in a way that only happened when someone moved through the rooms, or how the footprints led only halfway into the house, and then stopped completely. I stayed in that house for another month before moving out, but I never slept through another storm while I was there. If you made it this far, you're a true horror fan. If these stories gave you chills, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Scary Nightmares so you never miss another terrifying true story. If you've ever experienced anything creepy during a storm, drop your story in the comments below or send it to our Gmail, linked in the description and pinned comment. And finally, share this video with someone who thinks rainy nights are relaxing. Let's see if they still feel that way after this.